Hello folks, I hope that you're having just a great day and keeping yourself safe in today's modern COVID world. Today I want to do something a little different for you. I want to take a look at The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, but not any version of The Hobbit. Nope, we're going to be taking a look at the first edition of The Hobbit. Now, I thought about whether or not I should even bring you this video because there's not a lot of difference between this and that. There's really only a couple of sections in chapter 5 are different, which is the riddling chapter in the Misty Mountains, and then there's a couple of references to what happened later on in the novel that were also changed too. That's the only main change that actually happened during the course of this novel. But a lot of people out there don't know that there was a first edition of The Hobbit, and that J.R.R. Tolkien changing The Hobbit was one of the first examples of sort of a George Lucas changing the original sort of to better fit the vision, and how Star Wars now is Star Wars Volume 4, whereas it was originally sort of just released as a Star Wars, and it now feels more like a Volume 4 that pays lip service to the previous people, recasts those people in, and so forth, and as such. But J.R.R. Tolkien did it first with The Hobbit, and he did it from the first edition Hobbit to the second edition Hobbit, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's also hard to review it because it really just comes down to chapter 5, the riddling chapter. And the riddling chapter isn't even all about riddles. Riddles in the Dark is the name of the chapter. It's not all about riddles. There are other things that happen. But I'll back up a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about The Hobbit for you. It's obviously it's a book probably everybody who's reading my channel has read. If you're watching this, I'm sure you've read The Hobbit at least once, if not 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 times. It's not a book that's going to surprise anybody out there. And unfortunately, I don't have a hot new take on The Hobbit. So my review of this is actually going to be relatively short. Instead, I'm just going to give you sort of the historical context of The Hobbit's first edition, and let you know that there is a Hobbit first edition out there in case you didn't, and take a look at the chapter 5 under this version of The Hobbit for y'all out there. So let's go ahead and start taking a little look. This is the book that put J.R.R. Tolkien on the map, but it wasn't the big seller that The Lord of the Rings was going to be. And he did not envision The Lord of the Rings when he wrote The Hobbit. So he writes The Hobbit, and in chapter 5, which is the fifth chapter, by this time you've gone through the trolls, you've been captured by the goblins in the mountains, in the Misty Mountains, and now you've been set free. Gandalf has launched his surprise attack against the goblins. The lights have all gone out, the dwarves have fled, and Bilbo has fallen down a hole, and he's become abandoned by the rest of the people, and he's now on his own in the chapter Riddles in the Dark. And this is the chapter where he meets Golem and acquires the ring. And how he acquires the ring and how Golem is characterized is very, very different in this initial version of the book. Basically what winds up happening is that Bilbo finds the ring first. He comes up to an agreement with Golem. Golem will agree to give him a nice present in exchange for him winning the contest, and he will also show him, and then Bilbo will, obviously he'll eat Bilbo if he loses. Bilbo agrees to it. They set out. They have their normal riddling that you would normally expect in the Hobbit. They exchange riddles, although the writing for the riddles is a little different, and there's a couple of differences in this version in the first edition. When the version of our guy wins the match, you typically, with the same what's in my pocket sort of riddle, which isn't really a riddle, he kind of cheated his way into it. What will wind up happening is that Golem will go to give him the gift, and then he can't find the ring, which he was going to give to Bilbo. So instead of giving him the ring, he's going to show him the way out. He's very gentlemanly about it. He's not characterized as this crazy guy who's become possessed by the precious or anything like that. He's just this underwater creature. Underwater, not under a mountain creature who lives on the water for fighting for fish and so forth, who's been a bit deformed by his isolation. He seeks, obviously, contact with the Hobbit. He's not sure, he's never met a Hobbit before, and so he's more than happy to do some fun conversations, engage in a riddle game, and then give him the ring as a gift in case he wins. And he was intending to follow through with that, all of which would make no sense if this were actually the one ring, right? It's just a ring of invisibility. It's just a tool Golem uses to help make himself easier to kill the fish and to escape from the goblins above in case they come down to his lake. That's really all he uses it for. So he's happy to trade it if the guy wins. He even offers it as a trade. It's not like he says, well, you give me a gift. And he's like, all right, fine. He offers it as a trade as if Bilbo wins, and he intends to give it. Unfortunately, Bilbo already has it, and he doesn't know that. So instead, he shows him the way out as a very nice Gollum. And that's the exit of Gollum. Now, Bilbo will still lie about what happened later on. He will just pretend like, he won't mention the ring. He will, because he doesn't want the dwarves to think less of him. So he doesn't mention the riddle, Gollum, the maze, or anything like that. He says that I got out of the caves on my own, and this will be the first time that the dwarves will show him respect as a burglar. In the story, he's regularly been ridiculed by the dwarves up until now, and the ring will help them against the spiders and against the elves, and keep them alive in both those cases. Both of those times, he'll keep it secret, and by doing so, they have a very high opinion of him as a burglar. Eventually he'll come to terms with what it is later on and how he acquired it, and he'll go back and retell the story to them and add in Gollum and the riddles and the maze and so forth. But that's really the difference in the book, is that how Gollum is characterized, how the ring is exchanged, are all very, very different. And some of the more details of that chapter 5, are different in the initial version. As Tolkien was starting to write The Lord of the Rings, he realized that he wanted to incorporate this ring into the overall story and make it the One Ring. He realized what it was while he was working on The Lord of the Rings. And so he actually rewrote this chapter and a couple of the other lines and sent out an edit to the company that was publishing this book, but they never got back to him. So he was never sure if they made the changes or not. In fact, they did make the change. And the modern Hobbit is the second edition of the Hobbit. But what he does is he includes a line when Frodo meets Bilbo in The Lord of the Rings, where Bilbo admits that he had lied about how he acquired the ring. And you can see the influence of the ring and it's mentioned in Elrond's Council, in the chapter on Elrond's Council, too, that he was influenced, and so he lied. He said that this was the way he'd gotten a ring, but in fact that's not how he got the ring at all. He actually, the way that he got it was the edited form and so forth, but he was under the ring's influence, so he made it seem like it was just a ring. Gollum gave it to him. He was fine with it, right, and so forth. And so the reason why the ring... so he lied about that, and he's able to tell the truth now that he's no longer under the influence of the ring, now that Frodo has it. So you see the influence of the ring already, and so that's how Tolkien writes about it. There's like a line or two about that in the book. That's where that line was supposed to cover, in case the original story was never changed, although it was in fact changed. So that's what those lines are referring to in The Lord of the Rings. So, at least according to Wikipedia, those lines are recording to, and so forth. I did some research before I wrote this for you, and am talking to you about it now. But there you go. There's The Hobbit. That's the first edition of The Hobbit. I'll try to find it for you in the comments below, in the description of this, to find it. I bought the first edition on Amazon. I believe you can still find a first edition version of the book on Amazon. It has the original map, the original artwork by Tolkien, and so forth. It is a modern reprinting of that story. It was done for Christmas, I think, a couple of years ago, but you can, as a collector's edition, but you can still find it out there. But there you are. Did you know that there was a first edition of The Hobbit? Are you surprised to what extent it was edited, and how Tolkien was one of the first people in sort of the sort of genre fiction to sort of rewrite and go back to and change one of his original works in order to make it better mesh with his current work. Have you read the first edition? And if you have, I'd be happy to engage you with that further. What you think of it? What you think of the changes that he made? Did you like them or dislike them? What do you think about my comments? Anything you would like to talk about? I'm happy to talk with you about them in the comments below. Once again, I want to thank you so much for your time. You spent your whole time on this video and invested it with it. And the fact you spent this time with me is very humbling, especially since we have so much competition for our time in our modern society. And finally, if you like this video, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be so many more of these classics to follow in fantasy, science fiction, and horror for you. So once again, thanks for your time and have a great day.